Dear Chair, ladies and gentlemen, after such a speech, I'm not so sure on behalf of my committee I can deliver the opinion of one users of GDP, of course, because as Economic and Monetary Affairs Committee, we have on a day-to-day basis to use this GDP, and I'm quite sure we don't always reflect on what are we using, what is the tool we have in our hand. So I think for us, this conference is really coming in the right time. I'm very, very thankful to the Commission to have taken this initiative, because maybe time has come where, after discussion going on at the international level for some time, we are now meeting the need not to be only dreamers, but to move on to concrete action. And not later than last week, President Barroso was sitting in the plenary of the European Parliament telling us that at some stage Europe can be a good place to elaborate good standards and to propose ideas for a better world. If this theme could be one where the action of the Commission, with the support of the European Parliament, would help us to go ahead, I think this conference would be really a big success. I think it is important to underline that the purpose of gross domestic product, GDP, is normally simply to measure economic output and economic growth. GDP is also used to project a country's potential economic growth. Moreover, GDP can be compared across countries with a minimum of methodology difficulties. GDP was not created to be a measure for society well-being, but I recognize that it is often used as an indicator for that. I suppose that GDP has been used and is being used as an indicator of well-being because it is up to now the best available measure. It has served well for a good number of years, but I think that all policymakers realize that GDP cannot be the only basis that when decision and devising on economic policy in today's society. Let me underline that economic growth is necessary to ensure poverty can be fight and social inclusion guaranteed. This is a debate we might have among us, but this is also my strong belief. This all implies a need for more jobs. We need to realize that even activities that are not strictly speaking really adding something to society in an economic sense still provide people with a job and therefore with an income. You may think of activity like repairing a lock after a burglary or cleaning a beach after an oil tanker was broken. Economic growth is also necessary to meet the challenge of the aging society we are facing. Economic policy should therefore focus on an indicator measuring economic growth. GDP as a measure still has future in giving an indication of the realized economic output and also in giving an indication of the potential economic growth. As with all economic data, it is not the precise level as such that is most important, but the trend and the relation position, in this case, to other regions. I can only observe that GDP as a measurement has proven to be a reliable proxy for economic activity in that sense. However, using GDP as a measure has limitation, and I think I don't need to convince this audience about it. For instance, GDP does not take into consideration depletion of unrenewable resources. GDP also does not take into account the free rider problems. Seen from a modern policymaker point of view, this limitation must be overcome if we are to address the problem we are facing with climate change and other environmental issues. Another limitation of GDP is that it does not give any indication of the income distribution. From a policymaker point of view, a high deficiency that must be overcome is in our fight for a more fair distribution of wealth in today's society. Not does GDP measure a population well-being or quality of life. Understanding what definition well-being and quality of life is crucial, but subjective at the same time. It is not less crucial for policymakers from a very rich part of the world where most material needs of the population has been or at least can be met. Moreover, GDP measures are normally limited to country. This is now not always practical in a world where not only financial markets but all markets are becoming global. One can conclude from this that modern policymakers cannot rely on GDP solely when designing policies. Policy might take into account what could be called social progress. Therefore, GDP must be supplemented, not replaced, by other measures and perhaps more qualitative information. Our Western society have developed so much that the ordinary citizen nowadays expects politicians not only to just deliver long-term economic growth, growth should also be sustainable, including state-of-the-art health services, social securities, environmental protection, etc. This is a just and big challenge in an even more globalized world. For some issues, like environmental resources, we could simply set a price. This would mean integrating some externality into GDP. It sounds easy and it is necessary, but in reality it is extremely difficult, and we all know this. Think about the current discussion about emission trading. All of a sudden, there is no more free riding. It costs to pollute, and of course, industry reacts. This is in many ways a classical political fight between industry interests and green concerns. But let me, without doubt, I recognize that intellectual challenge and methodological issue needs to be considered as such. What is the right price? What should be the price fixed, and who should fix the price? Will pricing a free good benefit rich companies or rich society? Even for what intuitive seems to be the simplest way of improving GDP as a measure, there are many issues to discuss. The methodological issue do not get fewer when considering various indexes on well-being or quality of life. Moreover, there are also many political issues to be considered. First of all, what index is the best? And can any index be used in any country of the world? Second, even if a country scores high on a well-being or quality of life index, can policymakers be sure that it is the result of a given policy mix? And can policymakers in any other country simply copy the policy mix and be sure that their population will become happier? Or can a high well-being or quality of life score be explained simply that some people are just more positive than others, and so on? I have made clear that moving beyond GDP is not as easy as it sounds, but I'm quite sure you're aware of this, and you share it. I have also made it clear that it might be difficult for a politician to get a reliable answer for any type of index or GDP. Nevertheless, I do believe GDP, with its inherent difficulty, might remain for some time used by politicians to measure the economic output. But I also strongly believe that time has come where we need to reflect together, and I hope Europe can take the lead here to have a new measurement that would take into account what I would call public goods, because I think this is all what is relevant for the future of our planet. And in the end, as politicians, let me still believe that beyond index, we need conviction of policy makers to make sure when they have the good measure, they take the right decision. Thank you very much.